Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So this video is going to be slightly different from my usual content because it's not really going to be about game design. It's just going to be sort of an informative video on how to play Fatal Knockout. I'm not going to be going over every single rule in the game. For that you can check out the rule book, which I'll link in the description, the PDF, which is the current version of the rule book. But what I'm going to be covering is sort of example turns and how the game sort of looks on a turn-by-turn basis to see if it's kind of, you know, your thing. So the game usually looks like this. So you have the back of the box, which is this, which is part of the sort of stage, and then you also have the bottom of the box. So this here is actually the bottom of the box, which will slide into the lid. But just to be able to show you guys what's going on a bit easier and to give myself a bit more space, I'm just going to take that out and put it about there, and then just put the lid off to the side. Right, okay, so this is an example of the setup for the game. Now, there are a couple of tokens missing, just 'cause I'm actually struggling a bit to get everything in frame with the way that the camera's set up. But here you've got your board with your two fighters on them. We're playing with the Grappler, and we're playing with the Zoner as well, who has a little weapon with them. And then you've also got the player board set up with the draw, pocket, and discard piles, as well as the ultimate card for each fighter. So you have them to the edge of your player board to be able to put them in once you get to the end of your meter. So you start with your meter there and you end up there, which gives you your ultimate card, which you put to the bottom of your deck. But this is the very basic setup. Now, I've chosen the Grappler and the Zoner because these were the two fighters which I actually initially designed. With these fighters and with all fighters in the game, you get guidebooks as well. So if you ever played Disney or Marvel Villainous, you'll be familiar with this sort of thing where you have these books which give you information about how the player plays. So you can see with the Grappler there, the complexity is very low. Very, very simple fighter. It's a fighter which I recommend that most people start out with when it comes to playing the game. But yes, so the way that the game would start is that you'd usually just say, oh, who's most recently played a fighting game? Or, you know, who just wants to go first? Because overall, it doesn't really matter too much who goes first, just because the person who leads each round changes each round. And based off every spreadsheet that we've done when it comes to balancing, the order doesn't actually matter when it comes to the outcome of who wins. So, with each fighter, they shuffle their deck of cards, just like a regular shuffle, doesn't matter too much, and then they'll draw 3 to start the game. So once they've done that, I'll just quickly do that for each fighter. So just draw 3 cards, put them to the side. Well, you'll have them in your hands if you're actually playing, and then you just pick up your cards and then look at the first 3, so the 3 which you draw. So with here, we've got a safe attack, which is a low initiative card. In this game, lowest initiative goes first. Then you have charge and smash, which is a 9 initiative card, quite high. And then you have dash and whack, which is a very high initiative card as well. As you saw in that guidebook, the Grappler does have incredibly high initiative. Just overall, his average initiative is around 6.5 compared to the Zoners, which is around 4. So overall, the Zoner's cards will be going first in the turn order. This is to simulate, like in a fighting game, frame data and just overall speed of fighters as well. With this card in particular, it has a mod which says that if this card only works if I have taken 2 or more damage. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't play it. I can still play the card whenever I want. It's just that when it gets to this card in the turn order, if I haven't taken at least 2 damage, it just doesn't work, and that's it. Other things to make note of, I mean, obviously you've got the actions, which are iconography-based. I can assure you that iconography-based games can often be a bit obtuse. This game takes about 1 or 2 turns max to get used to how the icons work, and then after that, you are reading these cards in half a second rather than having to spend a minute reading a paragraph of text. So don't worry if you don't quite get these icons right now. At the top of the card, though, there is an icon which is very similar to the icon on the board, and you can probably tell that this means gain 1 meter, and this happens before you do anything else on the card. So, for example, there is another card here which has a mod which says rotate. Now, what happens with mods, usually, apart from the health cards, is that if you use a mod, then you cannot do any other action on the card. However, you do gain the meter first, so just keep that in mind. So once we got these 3 cards in our hand now, it'll be like, the leader will say, let's say the Grappler, I've got the Grappler's cards in hand. The first card, which I'll play down, because it works alternatively, is I'll play this card. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to move these tokens that you can't even see out of the way, move these boards right down, and then I'm going to play some cards. Okay, so the first card played by each fighter in a round is played face up, and the rest are played face down. So the way the leadership works is that the leader basically determines how many cards are played in a round, though it is still played alternatively. So now we'll look at the Zoner hand, and I won't show you, I'll just play one. So Safe Attack is a card which doesn't really matter because we're so far away from each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play Leaning Throw, which is a very intense card to play on turn 1 because it puts any fighter in immediate danger. Now, I could probably bank on the Grappler using Shield to be able to block my attack, but as you can see here, this attack does damage on spaces 3 to 4 away from me, which the Grappler is already in range. That's one of the great things about the Zoner, they can immediately get into the fray. So, the Grappler can now choose whether or not to play another card. And I'm going to decide to play another card, which I'll keep face down for now. I won't tell you which card I've played. But because the leader has played another card, that means that the second player, which is the Zoner, also has to play a card as well. So, the Zoner is going to choose to play... let me think. Is going to play this card. Play it face down. Okay. Now, the Grappler can now choose, if they wanted, to even play a third card. But let's say that the Grappler decides to end their turn here. So all cards are then revealed, and then they are put in initiative order. So we have a 2, 2, 7, and a 9. So this is a great example of what happens when you have 2 cards of the same number. Leader always wins. So that's another advantage of being a leader. So the way this would work is actually it's quite easy. This one, you just move those 2 up, stick that one in there, and then there we go. So before we get into it, I just noticed something. You might wonder why I wouldn't use Shield, the Shield modifier, on this card. That is because Grappler's main attacks, which are grabs, go through shields. They completely ignore shields. This is a buff which I gave to the Grappler quite a while ago. It is based off fighting game mechanics, but it is also based on the fact that the Grappler exclusively has to be close range to do damage. So he needs to be able to capitalize and also protect himself. From that, I gave the grab like the ability to go through shields. So the first card, which is Shield, and then attack one forward. So the Grappler would gain a shield in a direction of their choosing. They choose in front of them. So they'll place a shield down here, and then we'll attack one space in front, which does nothing. And then that's it. We also gain a meter. So I will just imagine that I'm moving one on the track, which actually gains me another shield. The way gaining 2 shields work is that you can choose, if you want to change the orientation of the shield to have it, say, facing behind you. I'm going to keep it facing the same way for now. Then we move on to the Zoner, who gains 2 meter, which also gains a shield anyway, so we don't even have to worry about using that mod later, even though it's not really going to do anything for us. We'll gain that shield regardless. And then after gaining that 2 meter and gaining that shield from my meter gain, which is, let me just move the cards off and show you exactly what I mean by that. So because I moved up 2 on the meter, so it started there, and I moved up 2, and I went over the shield icon, that means that I gained the shield, and that happens straight away in the same step that you gain the meter. So again, like, it happens immediately. So now I can push one space in front of me, which moves the player a space away if the player was here. So if the Grappler was here and I use push, it would push them there. However, the Grappler isn't there, so the push does nothing. And then I can choose to move up to 2 spaces backwards. What I'm going to do there is use the wording against the game. Well, it is actually how you're supposed to do it. But it feels like players are always feeling very crafty when this happens. And they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to move up to 2 spaces, and by that I mean none. So this would be move 2 spaces backwards here if I wanted to, but I'm going to choose to move nothing. Then we get straight onto my next card, which would allow me to move up to 3 spaces backwards and then attack. What I'm going to do is I am going to just let's have a look at the Grappler's card. So the Grappler can move up to 2 spaces forward. So in worst case scenario, they can move just there. So I'm not even going to retreat. I don't really need to. Like, the gap's still quite big. In fact, no, what I'll do is I'll move 1 space back. This is just so... in fact, no, I'm actually going to move 2 spaces back. And I'll tell you why. Because one of the things that the Zoner does, which is really, really interesting, is that they can... if they throw their weapon and it doesn't hit... the fighter, then the weapon will land on the stage, and then there are cards later, which I'll show you, which can potentially do damage from the weapon remotely. And so in this case, it would actually put the weapon on the stage and sort of zone out the Grappler, which is quite interesting. So now I'm going to use the bottom action of that card, which throws the weapon 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'm going to choose to put it 4 spaces away from me. And then it's time for the Grapplers go. So the Grappler gains 1 meter. I'll move that up there. Just imagine that I've done that. And then the Grappler can move up to 2 forward or up to 2 backwards. The Grappler, I'm going to choose to move 2 forward because the Grappler always needs to keep moving forward. And then that's the end of the turn. So cards go to the discard pile like that. And then both fighters would then draw back up to 3 cards. And so that really is how a... Let me just do that. Back up to 3 cards. That's how a turn works. So now you completely understand the entire game loop of Fatal Knockout. Fatal Knockout has a lot of depth. It can be quite complex, but at the end of the day, it is like a really, really simple game. So if we just have a look at the Zoner here, maybe we get a card, which we do actually. We get a card which demonstrates the remote detonation. So this icon here means remote detonation on spaces in front of the weapon. So the weapon, you can't see, the weapon's behind the Grappler. In front of the weapon, so on the space in front, which would damage the Grappler, to the right and to the left of it as well. So say if we played this card right here. First of all, I mean, I could mix up. What mix up means that I can do the bottom action instead of the top action. But regardless, I wouldn't be able to do the top action because I no longer have my weapon. That's why the weapon icon is present with the attack. That means that the attack would only work with the weapon. So the weapon is incredibly powerful and it's incredibly useful when it's on the stage away from you. But it does mean that you lose a bunch of potential damage from just basic attacks. However, I can use this action, which would damage the Grappler, and it would do 1 damage to them. And so what I do as the Grappler is I take a health token and put it on my health there. As you can see, with the player mat, you have 5 health. Like every single fighter in the game, they all have exactly 5 health, and as soon as you take 5 damage, you die. One final thing with the Zoner, the reason why I'm talking about the Zoner so much is because they have a lot more to them than the Grappler. The Grappler is very, very basic, though can be quite powerful, is they have another way to retrieve a weapon as well. So this is a very powerful card. It actually has 3 steps to it, which is very rare for most of these cards. Usually it's only reserved for ultimate cards. But as you can see here at the bottom, there's a big icon which just says retrieve weapon. Now, what's interesting about retrieving weapon in this game is that the weapon is an actual physical thing on the board. So, as you can imagine with like Thor's hammer from Marvel, if you retrieve a weapon and go through someone on the way past, you're going to do damage to them. And this actually works well with shields as well, because say we've still got these shields in the exact same scenario. The Grappler's shield is facing forwards. However, if the weapon is behind him, and I use this card here to retrieve weapon, then I can retrieve the weapon, do 1 damage in the back on the way past, because he's only shielded in front, and then gain my weapon back. So the Zoner is very, very, very versatile and very interesting to play, has a very high skill ceiling, and amongst the best players in the Fatal Knockout community, the Zoner is usually one of the highest picks, just because once you get good with them, it's going to be difficult to beat you. But yeah, that's a very quick run through of how a turn in Fatal Knockout works, and also some little extra bits there that I just wanted to show off. If you want videos related to the specific fighters, I can do in-depth videos on specific fighters and how to play them, bring out my internal Sakurai, then I can do. But yeah, this is just like a brief overview to see if this is a game which might interest you. But yeah, there's going to be a link to the Kickstarter pre-launch page in the description, so if you want to sign up to that, then you can do, to make sure you get notified when it goes live. But other than that, thank you guys for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Goodbye.